12 Nazis were executed at Nuremberg. 800,000 were pardoned and walked free. How did one of history's greatest evils just disappear? Spoiler alert, they didn't disappear. We found them. And this is their story. May 8, 1945. Germany surrenders. The war is over. But now comes an impossible question. What do you do with 45 million Nazis? The Allied powers, the US, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, split Germany into 4 zones. Their mission, denazification. Remove every trace of Nazi influence from German society. Sounds simple, right? Round up the bad guys, hold them accountable, rebuild. Here's where it gets complicated. 400,000 Germans were detained in internment camps, waiting for trial. But remember that number? 45 million Nazi Party members and supporters. Do the math. That's less than 1% detained. General Dwight Eisenhower estimated denazification would take 50 years. It lasted 6. Why did it fail so spectacularly? 3 reasons. 1. The bureaucratic nightmare. Imagine an entire country in line at the DMV. Now imagine trying to determine who's a war criminal and who just joined the party to keep their job. 2. The skilled worker problem. In the British zone, 90% of lawyers were Nazis. Britain decided 50% of legal positions could be staffed by nominal Nazis. Nazis, but not Nazis. The French zone fired 3/4 of teachers for Nazi ties. Then they had to rehire them, because you can't have schools without teachers, engineers, doctors, civil servants. If you removed everyone with Nazi connections, society would collapse. 3. The ultimate betrayal. Just 1 year after the war ended, the Allied powers handed denazification over to Germany. Wait. What? Germany was now in charge of punishing Germany. What could possibly go wrong? While bureaucrats shuffled papers, the worst of the worst were running. Destination? South America. 9,000 high-level Nazi officials and collaborators escaped to South America after the war. Brazil had them. Chile had them. But Argentina was Nazi paradise. Meet Juan Perón, Argentine president, fascism enthusiast. He'd served as a military attaché in Mussolini's Italy and absolutely loved what he saw. Perón wanted 2 things, power and expertise, and Nazis had both. So Perón and his government created rat lines, secret escape routes through ports in Italy and Spain. They forged documents, Red Cross passports with fake names, Argentine tourist visas stamped and ready. Nazis sailed across the Atlantic, carrying nothing but falsified papers and war crimes. Once in Argentina, some changed their names and disappeared. But others, they lived under their real names, because Argentina wouldn't extradite them, even when their identities were discovered. They got jobs, raised families, lived comfortably. While their victims' families grieved, they barbecued on Sundays. But Argentina wasn't the only country stealing Nazis. In 1945, the United States launched a secret program, Operation Paperclip. The mission: kidnap German scientists and engineers, many of them Nazis, and bring them to America. The Cold War was beginning. The Soviets wanted these scientists. America wanted these scientists. And whoever had the best rocket scientists would control the future. Near the end of the war, a Nazi scientist named Werner Osenberg created a list identifying Germany's top minds. A Polish lab technician found this list, torn up in a toilet. That list made its way from MI6 to U.S. intelligence. The Americans moved fast. They evacuated these men, which is a polite word for kidnapped. The scientists were held for months, interrogated, then offered a choice that wasn't really a choice: work for us or face war crimes trials. Many went on to incredibly successful careers. They helped build NASA. They designed the rockets that went to the moon. The technology in your smartphone? The satellites above your head? The GPS that guides you home? Built on Nazi science. While thousands escaped and hundreds worked for the Allies, a small group faced justice. The Nuremberg trials. 24 men indicted for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and wars of aggression. These trials were historic. They established international law for prosecuting war crimes. They held some of history's worst criminals accountable. The verdicts ranged from acquittal to 10 years imprisonment to execution. 12 were sentenced to death. 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust. 12 executions. Thousands of perpetrators never held responsible. Some criticized Nuremberg as victor's justice, the winners punishing the losers. Others pointed to the hypocrisy, Allied nations prosecuting crimes against humanity after their own controversial wartime actions. But for survivors seeking justice, Nuremberg was something, even if it wasn't enough. By 1948, the Cold War dominated everything. The U.S. cared more about stopping communism than punishing Nazis. Remaining cases were rushed through proceedings that were legally sketchy at best. Germany's approach? Make it easy. Anyone born after 1919 was considered brainwashed and exempt from punishment. Of the public officials the U.S. had removed from office, 75% were reinstated. 90% of Nazis were classified as lesser offenders. Denazification officially ended. Through pardons and amnesties, nearly 800,000 people were freed from any punishment or penalty. So, was Germany finally denazified? At the German Ministry of Justice, 77% of senior officials were former Nazis. The people judging Nazi crimes were Nazis. But some people refused to let it end. Nazi hunters emerged. Some were government agents. Others were survivors seeking justice themselves. Adolf Eichmann, the mastermind behind Hitler's final solution, the architect of the concentration camp network. He'd escaped to Buenos Aires, got a job at a Mercedes-Benz plant, lived with his wife and 4 children under a fake name. Israeli agents found him. They surveilled him for weeks, then made their move. They drugged him, disguised him as an Israeli airline worker who'd suffered head trauma, flew him out of Argentina. Argentina protested his kidnapping. Eichmann was tried in Israel and executed. Simon Wiesenthal, Holocaust survivor turned Nazi hunter. He tracked down Franz Stangl in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Stangl had run the T4 euthanasia program, murdering people with mental and physical disabilities. Stangl was extradited to West Germany, sentenced to life imprisonment. The hunt continued for decades. The United States. Jacques Palij, 95 years old, was deported. A historian at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum discovered Palij had served as a guard at a forced labor camp. He'd claimed he'd worked on his father's farm during the war. He'd lived in New York for 70 years, raised a family, became a citizen, and finally, in 2019, faced consequences. 12 executed at Nuremberg, 800,000 pardoned, 9,000 escaped to South America, 1,600 brought to America for their expertise, thousands reintegrated into German society. Most people alive during World War II have since passed away. Nazi hunting has largely died down. But the math doesn't lie. 6 million Jews murdered, millions more killed in the war, and the vast majority of perpetrators never faced justice. Some lived entire lives in comfort. Others were caught decades later. Many were never caught at all. This is the uncomfortable truth about what happened after World War II. The question we're left with isn't just, how did they escape? It's, what does justice mean when it comes 70 years late, or never comes at all? This is World War Archives. Thanks for watching.